All right, we are here with Christine Gritmon of Christine Gritmon Inc. Thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just get straight into it.
Sure.
Since your focus is on small and micro businesses for these questions, let's assume that people don't have to worry about backlash from any kind of management or anybody above them. Also, let's assume your audience is familiar with social media.
Big assumption.
Yeah, big assumption. Everyone has their opinions now. But can you give me a little bit of background on your history with small businesses and social media?
Sure. I'm kind of on career number 4 here, and the first one had nothing to do with small businesses. It was big businesses, huge corporate beauty world. And then I had my first child, and I realized I wanted to do something more creative and more fun and more me. So I became kind of a multi-hyphenate creative freelancer. I was a graphic designer. I was a Photoshop illustrator for a comedy website, which was interesting. And then I also became a freelance journalist, and that's what really kind of took off. And a lot of what I wrote about was small local businesses. So that kind of started helping them tell their story. Then I had my second kid, and I went into full-time journalism, which actually felt like a very different career from part-time journalism because I had to learn all these things. And that really is where the spark of this happened, because that was the first time that I was using social media professionally, first of all, because back when I was in corporate, it was before companies really had a social media department. So I hadn't even touched that in my previous career. But suddenly here I was in a newsroom in 2015, a whole other ball game. They were really learning how to.
And by the way, folks, we live right next to a fire station.
I feel very safe.
Yes, it's I don't know if we'll end up editing this out or not, but my guess is yes.
All right, well, we'll find out, and I'll start my sentence over again just in case.
And then it'll start back up, and
I think there's one more set.
That's right, you're familiar with this.
Maybe there isn't one more set.
Maybe it's the 10:52 in the morning trial.
I don't know.
I can never figure that out. What's amazing is we sleep, you know?
I know. There'll be 2 more sets, I think, probably.
Do you know what those mean, like as far as it's like
I
Morse
don't
code?
literally know the code, but it is related to the location.
Yeah.
The essential quadrant that you get
Yeah,
your
because
butt
I know
over to.
I see the actual levers on poles around the village.
Yeah.
It's a really old town that we live in.
It's old school. Okay, so then when I found myself in a newsroom in 2015, they were really just starting to get to know how to use social media as a really powerful tool for marketing, not only the work, but also the people, the personalities. And that was a big change for a lot of people in the newsroom because traditional journalism had taught them to keep themselves out of the story as much as possible, to really remove themselves. And now suddenly they had to develop followings and have a personal brand. And when I came into the newsroom, that came naturally to me somehow. I just kind of got it, and I did a lot of projects that turned out to really be aided by social media, and the whole newsroom learned stuff about how to use social media more effectively via some of these projects. And I wound up getting promoted from a writer to an engagement editor. And my job there was to, first of all, help the other newsroom personalities use social media to brand themselves and to put their work out there, but then also to do real life events and kind of be out there in the community, because of course social media is most useful when you use it not to replace human interaction, but to be kind of a conduit to greater human interaction. So we also had real life events that people found out about through social media, and we just tried to make it more of a two-way street, to use social media as an incredible tool to interact with our audience and to interact with these communities and be part of them and find out what was really going on, rather than using it as a place to distance ourselves from the readers. And so that was really fun and really great. And after a while of that, people started asking me to give talks on social media, not only through the paper, but also local business groups, things of that nature. And it was strange because my first reaction was, well, I don't know anything. Why are they asking me? I just kind of do it.
Right.
And after a while of doing that, I realized, oh no, not everyone gets the things that you get. Not everyone has your knowledge. Not everyone has an understanding of this, and there's a need out there. And due to my previous work, profiling small local businesses and getting to know small local business owners, my target market was clear once I decided that I wanted to go into social media. I wanted to help the small local mom and pop businesses that make our communities what they are. And there's a need there because a lot of them don't really understand social media, but I also feel like social media is such an incredible, unprecedented opportunity for them.
Sure, that connection that they're able to make directly there, then and there on the spot, it's very different. And what I've come to learn and realize is that it's funny that you bring up journalism, because I think that might be one of the first people that I have to look into really maybe bringing on, because of that copyright aspect of it, of knowing proper etiquette, and because you can't just always put your thoughts out there, on social media, because it's there forever.
And they had to have some trainings in the newsroom on social media. First of all, the idea of, if you express an opinion, even if you're not expressing it as being the opinion of the paper, people know you work for the paper. So you have to be careful what you say on social media. You can't be too politically outspoken, for example, because then people will sort of label their impression of the newspaper as being biased because they see you as a representation. So there was that element, but then there was also the element of sourcing material from social media. A lot of stories break on Twitter now, for example, and there's live footage from people who were in the thick of things. People are finding out about things from each other directly on social media rather than waiting for a news outlet to present the story to them. And that's great for news outlets if they can get a hold of that footage, but they also needed to have an understanding that you can't just go ahead and use someone else's footage. You need to ask for their permission, get their actual verbal consent to use their material, things like that. It's a whole new world for citizen journalism, really, and the way that traditional journalistic places need to work around that or work with that.
Right, they have to fact check, and I mean, they have so many more steps to go through rather than just pull out their phone.
Exactly.
And hit record.
And it's really exciting to be the first one to get that scoop, but it matters a lot more to be accurate and to have integrity. And so it's tricky to sort of find that balance with the immediacy of social media.
Do you think that social media has pushed networks to report sooner, and maybe
Absolutely.
not? Because, yeah, they have to be first.
Yeah, and it's kind of a mixed bag there, because on the one hand, it is good once the actual journalists come in, because they do feel a responsibility to present the real, true, checked, validated story, as opposed to just whoever, which, I can put whatever I want on Twitter. You can put whatever you want on Twitter. But if you're a news organization, you have to make sure that it is true, that it is accurate, that you're not presenting a slant on it. If you are a news organization with integrity.
Right.
So it can be good because they sort of have to, they can sort of help unmuddy the waters of everyone being able to put their 2 cents in. But it can also be bad because, again, there is that temptation to jump the gun and to make sure that your outlet has it first.
Right.
And it may not, before you even know what the story is necessarily. So it can be a mixed bag, and I think that the outlets with integrity are really working on figuring that out and making sure that they go back to the basics of proper journalism and journalistic ethics.
Right. So it's really, so you found that it was most relatable to reach out to micro and small business owners.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of your pitch. I've been fortunate enough to meet with you. I met you at a chamber meeting, which here in the village is much different than any other chamber meeting I've been to. It's
Yes.
fantastic. And then there's been 2 or 3 other times, and you talk about how it's scary for a lot of these people, because a lot of these people are maybe in their 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe even 60s. New York crime. But so
Apparently 60 was the word of the day. Woo!
Everybody take a shot. So, a lot of these people who thought they might be able to just get through with old school, we'll say older methods of just an honest handshake, dealing with meeting
Word
with
of
people,
mouth.
word of mouth, face to face, a lot of that stuff, and they're scared. Like, social media is scary. Why is social media scary?
It's really fascinating to me that there's a fear there, because I feel like relying on word of mouth, I find far more terrifying, because you never know what people are going to say about you. Whereas with social media, you're putting a message out there that's accessible to people. When someone hears about you from someone else, now they can look you up and see what you are saying about yourself on social media. It lets you control the conversation in a much better way, and it lets you get people talking about you. So I find it the opposite of scary. But I think the reason people think it's scary is a few factors. One of them is the privacy factor. People have this caution about social media and worrying, oh, well, I want to put stuff out there for my business, but I'm worried that it'll somehow put things out there about me, and then like random strangers will know about my life and where I live and my kids. So there's a privacy concern. That's what some people are afraid of. Other people are afraid of the internet is forever. If I put something out there that sounds stupid or that rubs somebody the wrong way, if I make a mistake, it's out there forever and everyone can see it. So the public nature of social media. And then other people, and this is honestly the biggest problem that I see, other people feel like it's time they don't have, it's effort that they don't have the energy to put forth. A lot of people feel like, you know what, running a small business is so exhausting and all-consuming. They just want to do what they got into business for. They don't want to have this whole separate marketing job on top of that they have to do. They feel like, you know what, I'm not a marketer. That's not what I got into this for. And it's just another job that I have to do, and I don't really want to do it.
I completely empathize with that. You know, it's strange because I have a marketing and media company, yet it's taken me close to 2 years to really hop on. I've wanted to...
They say the cobbler's children have no shoes, and it's true. Like, you can do it for other people, but doing it for yourself, it's like, ugh.
Sure, maids have the messiest houses. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just, I love talking to people one-on-one, and whether it be at a restaurant or an event that we get to kind of step away and really just kind of get to talk one-on-one with people. I know I've wanted to do this, but there was that fear that all of a sudden I was going. I'm not going to be a superstar. That's not my goal. But there's this.
You're not
fear
trying to be an influencer?
Gosh, I watched that Fire documentary, by the way, too. That was great. But no, hopefully I influence some people, but not in the traditional sense that I guess we'll say that.
You're not going to be
carries.
Kylie Jenner?
No.
No, good call.
I mean, to each their own, but that's not exactly.
Yeah.
Not exactly the way I'm gonna try to go about this, but. As far as tone, it's funny to hear people read back what they said, what they typed out, and then the response that they get from other people or things like that. Do you have any advice maybe on tone, or for people that might be a little bit afraid of what they put out there might be misconstrued? Is I guess between tone and acknowledging responses that maybe are negative, do you have any advice on that?
Well, I think two things that are really important, and this is where I start with anyone that I work with, is figuring out two really key things that'll help influence tone, which is, first of all, who are you trying to speak to? Because that's incredibly important, because you need to understand how they're going to understand your message. And who are you? And if you have a really strong understanding of who you're trying to speak to and who you are, you're not really going to go astray, because if you do say something that maybe rubs someone the wrong way, if they're not your people, who cares?
Right.
Yeah. It's a matter of you're not for everyone. If someone says my audience is everyone, I say no. Maybe you can help everyone, but that's not who you're targeting. You'll get other people. You will always get people who are not the people you're targeting. Like, that should not be a worry. Pigeonholing yourself should not be a worry. You just have to have a really clear understanding of who you really need to make sure does get your message. And if you understand kind of what they're looking for, you're going to be fine. And if you understand who you are, you're going to be fine. So those are two things to understand about your brand before you put anything out there. And then, sorry, what was the other part?
Oh, just as far as tone, and then being afraid that might be misconstrued.
Oh, and then what happens when it is misconstrued? Yes. So this comes up a lot, actually, because the internet has given everyone a voice, which means that anyone can say whatever they want to about your company, sort of without repercussion for them. And that is always tricky. Generally speaking, first off, being really confident in who you are as a brand and confidence in what you're offering is a tremendous asset there, because the fact is, you never, ever, ever, ever want to be defensive. Even if someone is 100% wrong, you never want to be defensive and say you're 100% wrong. You can be more of an, I'll take that into consideration. Thank you for the feedback. And mean that sometimes, because a lot of times your critics can be your best ally to getting better. But also, if you really do have that understanding of who you are, what you're offering, what you're doing, and who you really care about reaching, it'll let you know whose commentary to really sweat. Like if it's someone who is someone you really do want to please, and again, that can't be everyone. If it's someone who is a really important client profile to you, you really need to take what they're saying seriously. If it is someone who is not your client, or if it's someone giving a completely useless comment like, oh, this place is garbage, is a comment that I heard recently on a local business's page. You know, someone who just goes on a page and comments, this place is garbage, that's not someone who's...
That's someone who's got too much time.
That's someone who's not being useful, and that's someone whose business you really don't need. But at the same time, my goodness, don't tell them they're wrong. Just say, thanks for the useful feedback, you know? And how much you do really depends. I worked with someone, I didn't even officially work with them. This was just a friend of mine. They had a business that got into some hot water over some stuff that they had said on a personal Facebook profile that then people later connected to their business, and it went viral and people were furious. People felt like they were being disrespectful to their client base. It was kind of a mess. And then when they tried to defend it, it got worse, because defending always makes it worse. So I kind of coached her through. I said, here's the level of apology that is right to give. Here's the holes people could poke in it. Some of that matters, some of that doesn't. So the holes people could poke in it, I said, you don't want them to be able to say, oh, you're just sorry for getting caught. They'll say that no matter what. But the fact is, look at your actual words. Make sure that what you're saying isn't that you're sorry for getting caught. Make sure that what you're saying is that you're not sorry people got offended. You're sorry you said something that was offensive. Take responsibility, because people will parse the way you're phrasing things. And then on the other half of that, you have to accept the fact that people are going to read things the way they read things. There are still going to be, I said, no matter what, you can craft the perfect apology, the perfect mea culpa, the perfect acknowledgement that you were wrong, and there will still be people saying, it's insufficient, and they'll never use your business again, and you don't really mean it, and you're just sorry you got caught. No matter how you do it, you need to accept the fact that some people are just haters.
Yeah.
And deal with that. Once you've said your piece, shut your mouth. You don't have to defend yourself against the people who are just there to poke holes in everything. You do need to explain yourself and humble yourself to the people who matter. And really parsing that out can be scary when you're in the thick of it. But it works, because the people who are inclined to forgive you will forgive you if you do it right.
Sure.
The people who are disinclined to forgive you won't forgive you no matter how well you do it. So think about who you're going to worry about.
Right. And as I'm... Here's my dog making an appearance, being jealous of microphones.
Sweet
he hates
puppy.
Technology.
Come here, puppy.
Go over there for a second.
Come here, we're besties.
But as we're sitting here talking, I'm finding more and more value in your services, because yes, it can be scary, and I have a feeling if I asked you, how scary is it? I think in 2 years of existence, and I, for me, as not as a human, but as my company, obviously, but I've maybe gotten one or two negative comments, and I tend to be a little bit more reserved when it comes to interaction online, as far as putting anything that might be controversial out there. Mm-hmm. So let's get a little bit into maybe some of the initial strategies, or we'll just say that someone's they're familiar with social media, of course, but they have a company that's been around for 10 years, and they're just not sure where to start. How does the process begin when they decide that they would like to try to work with you and they bring you in for some help?
Well, again, the first part is figuring out getting a little more solid on their branding, who they are, who their brand is, what their brand voice is, what their target customers are. Because no matter how long you've been in business, it never hurts to go back to those basics to really re-examine them, make sure you're solid on what they are, see if anything has changed or shifted, if there's maybe a new client base you want to open up. It is always good to do that check-in periodically, no matter how long you've been in business. Another thing that I find that I have to work with people on a lot is figuring out what is special and unique about them. Because what is special and unique about them is never what they do. Because other people do it. No matter what it is, there's someone else who does it. That cannot be your point of difference. Your point of difference has to be the people. And that is actually one of the reasons I love small businesses. Because generally speaking, with the businesses I work with, the person who started it is the person who owns it, is the person you see every day when you walk in, if that's a brick and mortar or even if it's a consultant of some sort. So they really have their arms around that business. People are afraid to put their face out there. People are afraid to be human with their business. They kind of want to hide behind that business entity. But that is taking away your biggest advantage, not only as a small business owner in general, but especially on social media, because people want to see people. People want to interact with people. That's what gets that know, like, and trust factor. People want to do business with people who they feel like they know, they like, and they trust. And it usually develops in that order. And you can't do that if you're just kind of a nameless, faceless business entity. So, but it also doesn't necessarily have to be you. I mean, you can find some sort of element of your business to almost personify. You need to figure out what are those things where people see it and they're like, oh, I make that mental connection with that business. I know what this is. I know whose post this is. So figuring out that stuff is really important to do before we even get into the specifics of here's what you should post. Because it all flows from there. Understanding that everything you post is going to create a piece of that puzzle of who you are and who your brand is. You got to know what the puzzle looks like first.
Yeah, could you give us an example maybe of that personification of a different aspect?
Absolutely. I know that there is. I worked with a client once where a lot of their stuff was sort of behind the scenes, and it was objects, not people. But then they put their dog on there once a week. Because their dog actually goes to the office. Yeah. It wasn't just pulled out of nowhere. People who do business with their company have met this dog. So that was kind of a nice thing. And I know some other businesses have had sort of an object that's like a little mascot in their office. I know there's a coffee shop I'm very fond of, and they have this cute little crocheted coffee mug that's up at the register. I think they should use that more in their social media posts.
What's the coffee shop?
Yeah, I don't work with them.
Fair enough.
But it's not here in Nyack. But I feel like they should definitely have that in more of their stuff, the little crocheted coffee cup, because the fact is you know where it is if you go there. There's all sorts of little things like that. And then I know when it comes to a local boutique or something where they're selling clothing or other things of that nature, I always encourage people not to use manufacturer pictures. Don't use the picture from the fashion line. Don't use the picture from whoever makes that gift item. Use pictures of it in your store, maybe one of your employees wearing it, if they're comfortable with that. If people aren't comfortable getting on camera themselves, you know what? Bundle it with other things that would be good with it. Because part of why someone is going to shop local is because of your taste and your curation. Another reason people are going to shop local as opposed to doing stuff online is that human connection. You feel like you are benefiting a human as opposed to buying a third summer home for a nameless, faceless CEO somewhere.
Right.
You're not helping billionaires, you're helping your neighbors. And I feel like you need to push that hard, the human element. You are helping a real live person who you trust, who you feel a connection to, and who you think is doing a good job. And so that's why I really feel like emphasizing the human, emphasizing the small, emphasizing the local if you're local, is the best thing you can do, because those are the only real competitive advantages that no one can duplicate or remove from you and your business.
Sure, and that's typically where your passion lies as well. So it's much easier to kind of speak to that more often than you're actually yourself. I'd much rather talk about what I do than the personal aspects of my life.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, and that's where you can gain a unique audience that'll be loyal.
Yeah. Loyal like your doggy here.
He is loyal to love. I'll tell you that much. He and he's super jealous of technology.
Aw.
But yeah, we'll keep him. So is there anybody that you would recommend looking at as far as doing it right, or that you kind of check in on a consistent basis that you really feel has developed their own style or brand or product that impresses you?
Oh, heck yeah. My friends Andrew and Pete, and their company is called Andrew and Pete. They're in England. They're in Nottingham. And they're fantastic. Their whole thing is they are content marketers. They teach people how to create great content. They have their own little society called Atomic. It's not very expensive to join, and you get access constantly to incredible trainings, incredible training videos, live streams. They have a private Facebook group for Atomic members where I've met so many people, including people I've collaborated with. They're throwing their first ever conference in March in Newcastle, and I'm going to be a speaker, which is great.
Very cool.
But the one of the things that has been most valuable in my own journey is their second book, I think. It might have been their third. I think it was their second book called Content Mavericks. So that's Content Mavericks by Andrew and Pete. And it's incredible. I read it on a plane. It's a very short book, but it's value-packed, man. It's incredible. I read it on the plane on my way to a conference in San Diego, Social Media Marketing World, which is how I met them to begin with at that conference the previous year, and they always speak at it. They're keynoting this year. So I was reading it on the plane on the way to the conference last year, and I immediately read it a second time. I read it the first time to digest it, but there are all sorts of little activities you can do where it said, okay, now, take a sheet of paper and do these columns and think of this in this column and then see what catches your eye and then move that to that. And just that type of work, the second time I went through and I did all of those exercises, and I actually plan to do that exercise at least annually to see if anything has shifted, because it taught me so much. Again, I teach people about finding their brand, but you still need to do the work yourself, right?
Sure.
So it taught me so much more about my brand. It clarified why some things that I was doing weren't working and why some things that I was doing I should maybe invest a little bit more effort in. Because it really showed me, you know what, here's who your brand is and who it works for, and here's what you should be focusing on, and it was incredible. So Content Mavericks is something I really recommend, and Andrew and Pete's Atomic Society is really helpful, and they're so entertaining and down to earth. Their podcast, I think, is coming back for the third season soon, but it's one of the most entertaining podcasts I've ever listened to on the topic of marketing. Because their first two seasons, each season was sort of a competition. They had challengers who are from the upper echelons of the social media marketing world, much as they themselves are now. And they had them do all sorts of funny little games and stuff, but it was all relating to social media marketing. So it was educational, but it was also people kind of making fools of themselves. It was so much fun. I learned a lot and I laughed a lot. And that really sums up any of their content.
That's great. I love that idea, and as I grow, I love the idea of these mini contests that have short deadlines that just force you to make decisions quickly and then, have a creative product. And it's never, I don't think it's ever as bad as you think it is while you're going through it, pulling out your hair.
No. And the fact is, if you try something and it's not great, oh well. Next, do something else, because the worst thing you can do is put something out there that's not great and then not put anything else out there. You want to do the opposite. If you put something out there that's not great, oh God, that can't be your most recent thing because everyone's going to see it. So you need to sort of bury it with newness, and it works. The internet is forever, but that doesn't mean you can find stuff.
And I know I'd like to get into platforms that you like here in a second, but I know it's crazy to me sometimes that I will be so proud of a piece of work and then it doesn't get near the response I think it does. Yeah. And then I'll put out just something I shot with my phone, or, that maybe has one little piece of advice that just skyrockets. But I will say,
the best work is never what goes viral. When I was a Photoshop humorist back in the day, I did some really great pieces for this comedy website. And the one that went super viral kind of sucked. It's still coming. I did it in, I think, 2013, and it's still cropping up. People are still sharing it on social media platforms, and people have actually copied it and added more.
Can I ask what it is?
Honest Disney posters. And literally, I had done some great Photoshop work for this website, but this one, literally all we did was a comedy writer friend of mine, Nick Nadell. He and I came up with some, honest titles, and I just found fonts that were similar, and I just slapped it on the movie cover. That wasn't even really Photoshop work. It was more like design work. And that's what went super viral, not the stuff I slaved over for hours.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to find that and link to it. And then also with Andrew and Pete,
Yeah.
I'll also see what they have coming up as far as interactivity and things that you can do yourself as far as either marketing and maybe some other people might want to just give it a try, and we can put it out there to our communities and join along.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, that's great. The Disney hilarity. I'm in. I was raised on Disney.
Weren't we all?
Weren't we all? It was it's the fairy tale story. Let's see here.
Oh, the puppy's done with me.
He's mad. This is taking over.
I gave him enough love. Well, I gave him love the whole time.
The entire time. He's still giving us an angry look. Let's see. All right, so as far as platforms, I've found that B2B LinkedIn has been more intriguing as of this past year, which is probably just me rather than
No,
actually.
they've added features. They're getting more interactive. And it's sort of a mixed bag, because on the one hand, it's great that they are encouraging people to go there every day and interact, as opposed to just planting their resume on there as a static thing and only checking in when they are looking for work,
right,
or changing jobs. So it's good that they have made themselves relevant on a more daily basis. I think they're going a little too far the other way by taking on other platforms' features. They're kind of trying to be Facebook in a way. They have video now, which is a big thing that they're trying to push. And I get it. I love video, but I have other platforms for that.
Right.
And their blogging platform is actually a pretty good thing that they should stick with a little harder, because it's a point of difference for them. And they now have the ability to add documents to posts. That makes sense for LinkedIn. Documents. It just sounds businessy.
Right.
But I feel like I heard that they're working on live video coming forward, and that's not what I go to LinkedIn for, really. And they also have now camera skins. That's not the word. Filters.
Yeah.
They now have camera filters.
LinkedIn.
That's not what I go to LinkedIn for. I understand the advantage of, you're a conference. You want to make sure people can share photos from the conference with the little frame that says, hey, here's what the conference is. Yeah, no, that's not what LinkedIn is for. That's...
Do you have any advice or thoughts on? I'm seeing a lot of people put videos. They pull out their phone and they put videos on LinkedIn, which has been a huge swing, because I really liked going to LinkedIn because it did have that professional feel. And my strategy was everything that's basically not just a random thought that I plan out. I like to put on LinkedIn. Do you have any? And I certainly can't hate against anybody that does it and it works, because
whatever works for you.
It seems to be working.
I have a friend who is killing it with LinkedIn video. My friend Michaela Alexis. She's done such great things with LinkedIn. She has really blown apart people's preconceived notions of how to present yourself professionally on LinkedIn. She's redefined it as saying that doesn't mean boring. And she's very not boring, but at the same time, she is killing it professionally through LinkedIn. She's become a huge thought leader, a huge influencer, and she's teaching other people how to also make LinkedIn work better for them. And she's doing really well with video. But at the same time, she's not everyone, and I feel like her market is a little bit different from the straightforward B2B market, because she's sort of marketing to marketers in a way.
Right.
And I feel like that you can get away with a lot more interesting and creative things than if you're marketing to a different type of business owner.
Right.
So when it comes to any new feature on any platform, really think about the experience your target audience is expecting to have on that platform.
Right.
Because I feel like certain people, if they went up there and did what is working for other people, it would backfire. They'd say, this isn't what I expect.
So do you recommend, obviously, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter? Am I missing anything there?
Some people, Pinterest is useful. Some people, YouTube is useful. It really depends. And one thing that I think is really key, people get psyched out and figure like they have to be on all these platforms and it's going to take so much time and they have to figure it out. Figure out where your people are, because they're not on all those platforms. You don't have to invest in a whole strategy for each of those platforms. Myself, for example, I love social media. I swim in it all day long. I love doing all the things. I'm not invested in YouTube or Pinterest. I have them. You can find me on them. But that's not where my engagement comes from. And I feel like I'm so invested in Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and to a different extent, LinkedIn. LinkedIn comes and goes for me. But I'm so invested in being where I am that I don't worry as much about the other things. Meanwhile, separately, I'm about to be starting a house blog, just personally, totally separately. And for that, I'm going to be doing a lot of Pinterest. But I'm not doing anything on Twitter for that. I'm probably not even going to do much on Facebook for that. Like, that's really going to be Instagram and Pinterest for me. And it's and maybe some YouTube.
Yeah. Sure, that makes sense.
So it's because it's a very different type of content for a very different type of audience. But it's all about knowing not only where your audience is and what they want to see, it's also knowing what you'll do. Because that is also really key. I try to talk to people because by definition, the people who work with me are not that comfortable with social media usually. And so one thing I say is, what will you actually do? Like, if I tell you all these great things about Instagram, are you actually going to start posting pictures, or are you more of a word person and that's not really going to happen? Same with Twitter. Very few of my clients are Twitter people, and that's fine. They don't have to be. I do warn them, though, that if they try to auto-post Facebook or Instagram posts to their Twitter account, it doesn't show up nicely. Like, they should probably just repost it directly.
I should probably check that out.
Yeah, it just shows up as an ugly link. It basically is like a blaring neon sign saying, I don't care about Twitter.
Sure. Yep. I've got that one glowing in the window.
Yeah, I mean, even if you are going to duplicate content, and you ideally should come up with unique content for every platform, but even if you are going to go ahead and duplicate content, just post it fresh. Post the exact same thing just natively to the platform. It's going to do better with the algorithm, and it's going to show up properly.
Do you recommend, I know there's programs out there like Hootsuite and Buffer, correct? They have
Those can be a lifesaver.
Yeah, they have the ability to post as if they were individual posts for each platform, correct?
They do. And what I would recommend is to take a step further and tweak the content slightly for each of them, because you're already saving yourself time and effort by preloading your content, right? So it's not that bad to take an extra 2 seconds and just tweak the message slightly, especially if someone is following you on multiple platforms. They want to see different things. Otherwise, why are they bothering to follow you on multiple platforms? They don't want to see the same post 3 times. And also there's the fact that people communicate differently on the platforms. Instagram, you need to immediately capture their attention and evoke an emotion with an image. Because even though you do have a caption there, people aren't going to stop scrolling and read your caption unless your image has stopped them in their tracks. Meanwhile, Twitter, yes, you can have an image, you can have a video, you can have all these things on Twitter, and it's good to. I rarely post without an image anymore, but it really is about communicating information in words. You know, Twitter started being just words and succinct words. It started being 140 characters. Now it's 280, but that's still pretty succinct.
Yeah.
So you communicate in a different way. People are looking for something different. Facebook is a mixed bag. Facebook, you can do all sorts of things, and you should take advantage of the fact that you can do all sorts of things. You can put a link in your Facebook post. Why not? You know,
Sure.
I mean, you can. You can't do that on Instagram. So really think, and we talked earlier about how LinkedIn, people go there expecting a certain type of experience, and the more they try to be Facebook, the more that experience gets diluted. So really think about what people go to each platform for, how they're using it, and proceed accordingly. Make sure that you are fitting into those communication standards. Make sure you're speaking their language.
This is great, and why I found a huge interest in what you do. When I first met you, you had said I help business owners, micro and small business owners, make social media less scary.
Yep.
And that just made perfect sense because, if you just say find the platform with, your audience and, try it out and then make sure that platform is right with your, message and brand, you have that all lined up. And as we're going through all this, that can be extremely, frightening if someone's never even really done anything besides Facebook. I think Facebook was one of the first major ones to come along. And with me, I've kind of put Facebook and Twitter kind of to the side. And I know I need to be exploring that a little bit more. And I appreciate the tips for each platform, because that's what I wanted to know, is for these people that just want to try dipping their toe in and they're not sure what each platform is for. I appreciate you getting into that a little bit.
And the fact is, if what you do is working on Instagram and YouTube, for example, that is fine. Do what's going to work for you.
Right. Okay. Well, let's get into you. What would you say is your biggest? What is your biggest hindrance, or what do you have the most trouble with on the advice you give?
Making sure they do it. Because when I first started my business 2 years ago, I was doing social media for people, and I quickly stopped doing that, partially because you can only do it well for a few clients at a time, and my clients are at a price point where I couldn't make it on just a few clients at a time. But then also, I truly feel that, as I said before, one of the biggest advantages the teeny tiny businesses have is that they've got someone there who has their arms around everything. So they're already there. They're already in it. I just teach them how to turn what's already happening into content. And some people have done it incredibly. There's a few former clients who I see where we did our work together and now they can fly on their own. And I love it because I'm seeing them and I know how they used to be. They used to be scared to post. They didn't know what to post. And now they have all these followers and they're posting great stuff and their feed looks really cohesive and they're getting sales from it. And I love that. And then there's other people where we'll do a series of a few sessions together, and between session 1 and session 2, they haven't done anything. And I was like, well, session 2 is supposed to build on what you learned from session 1, but you didn't really learn anything if you haven't put it into practice. So you have to put these things into practice in order for us to see what works for you, because none of it is universal. And you're not going to learn anything about how to do it if you don't do it and see what the response is with your specific audience. And so that is the hardest part of the work that I do with people, making sure that they actually do it, because I can't be there, doing it for them. And if they don't do it, then I haven't helped them, and that makes me sad. And that makes them sad too, because they feel like they wasted their money. So that's kind of one of the hard parts. Another thing is that because I work with teeny tiny businesses that are already feeling pretty overstretched, it can be hard for people to part with money to invest in their businesses. It's kind of a catch-22. They know they need to spend money to make money. They know they need to, invest in their business, but they also feel like they don't have any money lying around to invest in their business. And I understand that completely because I'm in the same boat. There's all sorts of things where I'm like, my life would be so much easier if I were using that service to help monitor my social media and tie these things together. But I can't spend that money every month right now, so I get it. I'm a small business owner too, and it sucks to have to constantly be choosing between investing in your business versus, having liquidity, I guess.
Right.
And so I get that, and it is hard, which is especially why I want to make sure that people actually use the things that I teach them, because they didn't have that money lying around. That was something, they felt that money coming out. And I want them to feel it coming back in many times over.
Do you think that ads Do you have any thoughts on ads? Because I'm constantly seeing, as soon as you get on, it seems like once every couple of days, you reach 2,000 more people by putting in $10 and all that.
Yeah. Facebook has gotten really annoying with that, especially since they're encouraging people to boost, and boosting is not the most efficient use of your money. Ads Manager is, which is kind of a pain in the butt to work through. It takes time to set up an ad via Ads Manager, but it's worth it because the targeting is better. You're going to get better results for less money. And a lot of times the things that they suggest, and I recently have had several posts where they've said, oh, this one's getting engagement. We'll give you $5 free if you boost it. I'm like, this isn't the post I want to boost, though. Why aren't you suggesting this for something that I actually made? I just shared someone else's article. I'm not really paying to boost that. Right. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. If it's doing well for you, you can pay to boost someone else's article that you shared because you're still on it. And hopefully you've also shared some insights as to why you shared it with your audience and why it's of value to you. Hopefully you've added value to that shared post. But regardless, I am talking to people about creating content. So if I boost something, if I turn something into an ad, it's not going to be someone else's stuff, usually.
Right.
And so I don't really know what kind of setting they have to identify the post they're going to suggest. It's not engagement. They claim that it is. They say this post is getting 80% more engagement than your other recent posts. And I look at it and I'm like, it's not, though. This other post has more comments. This other post has shares. I don't know where you're getting that from.
Man.
I mean, it's confusing because there are all these little pop-ups and suggestions. And when I'm working with clients, I increasingly have to say to them, don't worry about that. Just X out of that. Just X out of that. That thing's trying to confuse you. It's trying to throw you off. Just focus. It can be almost harder. They're trying to make it easier. They're actually making it harder.
So obviously this is all hugely relevant and useful information for people that are trying to put themselves out there. Do you recommend combining your personal with your business? Because I've thought about getting on Twitter just because there's sometimes I have thoughts that either might be slightly informational, but more just kind of letting people into the type of person that I am. But then again, there's always that line that you don't want to cross, and then, it comes into your business and you don't want it to.
It really depends. I'm the worst with blurring that line. I blur the heck out of that line, but at the same time, my business is me.
Sure.
And I'm kind of okay with that. Sometimes my husband or my mother, especially my mother, will see that I've posted something and it'll be something that's posted on what is a public facing account. And they'll say, oh, are you sure you want to go there? I mean, this is your business.
In the post as a comment.
No, not always. But I'm like, yeah, I do, though, because that's me. But I think most people should draw a better line. But it really does depend. It depends on how much you are the product. If you own a store, for example, maybe have a line there. And you can still have a personal brand and a personal presence because you are still part of the value, but maybe have separate accounts and just, but at the same time, if you are the product, if you are the brand, I feel like it's okay to put stuff out there. You kind of have to figure out what your own comfort level with potential controversy is, I suppose, and what your comfort level with privacy is. I have 2 Facebook profiles and I have multiple Instagram profiles because before I was public facing when I was in the newsroom, I had this Facebook account forever and it dumped pictures from high school. Facebook didn't exist when I was in high school, but the fact is we scanned pictures, and personal stuff and whatever. It's my whole life on there. And I didn't want that public. So then I started a public profile with the intention of just using it for work. But as my lines have blurred in life, the public profile is now my real profile. I don't really use the old one anymore. I kind of want to almost close it down, except it has all the history there. Because over the years, my comfort level with blurring that line has shifted. And similarly on Instagram, I have an old Instagram account that's private. And at this point, it's just pictures of my kids. Because I'm using the public-facing one as my real one. Though the public-facing one has business stuff, but it also has, here's what I had for lunch. Which is also on brand for me because so much of my thing is small local business. Here's a small local business where I had lunch. So it is still on brand for me, even though it's personal. It's always just, I'm more blurred than I recommend most people should be, but the fact remains, figure out your comfort level, figure out your parameters. If you're not expressing the personal stuff, are you cool with just not expressing the personal stuff? Or do you need a separate outlet for that?
Right. And is it even relative to gaining more business if that is ultimately your goal, which I think hopefully a majority of the listeners at least have a cause that they're trying to push or just find us genuinely entertaining.
Well,
But,
we are.
Oh,
We're delightful.
we'll do a song and dance here in a second. But is there anything that has you especially curious or excited about the near future on any specific platform or just in general even?
I'm curious about what I'm sort of terming in my head as the video wars, because it's interesting. Because, of course, there was Snapchat, right? And Snapchat did these, short form, very quick little videos. Facebook Live happened as a result of Periscope. Periscope and Meerkat were these live streaming platforms that existed before Facebook had a live feature. I remember when Facebook launched Facebook Live. Originally, it was only for users with the little check mark and like news outlets. And thankfully, I was both of those things at that time. So I was an early user of Facebook Live. That helped successfully kill Meerkat, honestly. And it kind of changed the game for Periscope. Similarly, Instagram introducing stories, and Facebook has stories now too. Everybody has stories now. But the fact is, it started with Snapchat. When Instagram stories happened, that has sort of killed Snapchat to a degree. And now LinkedIn is getting in on the video game. Periscope has announced that they are adding a feature where you can bring in viewers live, which you can already do on Facebook Live and Instagram Live. So I'm not entirely clear on what the difference is there.
Can you tell us a little bit about Periscope? Because I've heard it brought up when I'm listening to other podcasts on iTunes, and they'll say also find us on Periscope.
Periscope is solely live streaming. It doesn't have anything else surrounding it like on Facebook or Instagram. It is solely live streaming. That is its reasons for existence. And one of the ways that people use Periscope a little bit differently is Periscope is more about the experience of being there. So you don't have to feel like you're putting on a show necessarily. I mean, people do shows, but the fact is you can also... I have a friend who, the first time they picked up Periscope, they wound up watching like a sunrise in Botswana or something.
Very cool.
I had a lot of viewership on Periscope once when I went live from New York Comic Con. And I literally was just showing the room. I wasn't doing anything interesting. It's just people wanted the experience of being there, which is a little bit different. If you go on Facebook Live, you can do that, but it's not really going to be as engaging. It's a little more passive. Periscope just announced that they're going to become a little less passive by allowing you to bring live viewers on, and they're trying to encourage a little bit more of that show format. Separately, they also have an audio-only feature now, and Periscope is owned by Twitter, by the way, so there's kind of some blur there. But Twitter, you can also do just an audio-only live, and it's interesting because Facebook and Instagram haven't gone there yet, audio-only live, but the popularity of podcasting, it feels backwards to me that it's going, to taking the video out of a live. But it's interesting. So I'm kind of interested to see how that all goes. The fact that LinkedIn has video now, people are talking about, when are they going to have live video? Well, how is that going to be different from a Facebook Live show? How is that going to be different from Twitter Live? How is that going to be different from Periscope? How is it all different from Snapchat? What is Snapchat? Is Snapchat going to announce something new that brings it back into the game? Or is Snapchat just kind of going to say, we're this thing now? Kind of like MySpace became a platform for musicians. Before that, Friendster, RIP Friendster. Friendster became a gaming platform at some point. So is Snapchat just going to become a hyper-specialized market and sort of go, gently into that dark night? Right. Or are they going to surprise us all with something new that we haven't thought of yet? I'm just really curious as to where all of this media is going to shake out. Because right now, just everyone putting the same features together, it's not going to stay like this.
Right.
Someone's going to pull out some game changers. Some people are going to fall by the wayside. I'm just curious as to how it'll all hash out. And I think that the podcasting thing is going to be a huge game changer. Even though podcasts have been around for years and years and years, the fact is there hasn't arisen a dominant platform all about podcasts. You can listen to your podcast on iTunes or on Stitcher or on, there's a number of things, but they're all sort of, you can listen to it on this number of things, but the podcast is the podcast. I'm really thinking that something is going to emerge around podcasting, the same way YouTube emerged around videos. And I don't know if it'll be Anchor or maybe Periscope will take that on. Who knows? But I'm curious to see where everyone having the same type of content on all the platforms, how is that going to shake out? Who's going to be dominant and who's going to bring in something that I'm not even predicting yet?
Right. I obviously am a fan of podcasts, but it seems like a more down-to-earth way for people to express their ideas and be a part of, their audience's daily life.
Yeah. You can listen to it in the car. I pretty
Absolutely.
much only get my podcast on, like when I'm driving someplace, or occasionally I'll take a relaxing bath and I'll listen to a podcast in there. Me time.
There you go.
It's really driving though. Driving alone, which I don't get to do a lot because I have 2 kids, but driving alone is really when I get to listen to podcasts, and it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
It's like special time with them.
Between podcasts and Audible, I've become an Audible fan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate you hanging in there. I cut the heat so we could...
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay, great, because we're
okay.
sitting right by a 30-degree window.
I'm fine.
But I do want to, obviously respect your time, and hopefully, this will continue to go on, and as we both kind of grow, we can, share these ideas. And I definitely want to encourage people to check out Christine Gritmon with Christine Gritmon Inc. because it truly is. It's been that gap for me because I didn't even really acknowledge, like I felt like the people I would be reaching out to already at least had an enthusiasm for social media. But even whether they do or don't, there's certain questions that they have about how to handle things properly, or at least to where they're confident in what they are trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Is there any projects you have coming up that you're really excited about?
Yeah. I met this woman, Doreen Morin Van Dam, when we were both speaking at the Inbound conference in Boston this past fall. And we both work with small local businesses. She's in South Carolina and I'm up here in New York. But we do such similar things and they're really not geographically bound. So we've decided to collaborate on some stuff this year. And our first collaboration, we're calling it How to Social. It's a 3-parter about content creation specifically. So first we did a 3-day content challenge. We had a little private Facebook group, and each one of those 3 days we said, okay, here's the type of content you're going to do today, and share it in the group and talk about, what struggles you had with it or anything you learned from it. And so we did that last week. Now we're into phase 2, which will have happened by the time this airs, is a couple free webinars, which really get into, okay, now let's talk about the background of content strategy. Like, what sort of things do you want to think about before putting your content together? What works on what platforms? What types of content are you thinking about here? So those are free webinars, all leading up to on Sunday evening, February 24th, at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're calling our Masterclass. So that is a paid webinar, but it's pretty cheap. And that's a lot more value packed because instead of saying, all right, here's why you want to do this, we're really directing how can you set up a content strategy that's going to be sustainable. What do you do? As opposed to saying, oh, well, here's the sorts of things that work on these platforms. It's a little more concrete. Here's how to put a content strategy together in a way that, once you learn from this webinar, you'll be able to go do it and you'll have this knowledge forever. And it's evergreen. It'll always work. It's not, here's what to post this day or whatever. So that's really exciting. Our How to Social Content Strategy Masterclass. And people can find out about that. I got a bit.ly link so I could remember it. So bit.ly/howtosocial2019. But the thing is, you have to capitalize each of the words. So capital H on how, capital T on to, capital S on social, and then the numerals 2019.
Great. I'll definitely put that in the notes, and then also put it on the screen for the people watching on video.
I'm really excited about it because we're good. We put the slides together, and we're going to take turns talking. But it's going to be really great to be able to empower people with the knowledge, so they know they have to put content out there. They don't know what to put out there or why. So we'll really help people figure out how to do that going forward in the way that we would with a client.
I'm pumped. I will absolutely. Barring any business I have to take care of, which is 7 o'clock. I hope I'm not doing.
Yeah, 7 o'clock
anything.
on a Sunday evening is a good time to sort of to get your head straight for the work week.
It's like you thought about it beforehand.
Yeah.
It's like you planned it out well. It's like you've done
Yeah.
this before. How about any for marketers or just people in small businesses? You've clearly been on a speaking. Done several speaking engagements for various.
I like talking.
It's been interesting every single time. When I saw you on that LinkedIn panel, I honestly, because that was only maybe the second or third time I'd actually interacted with you. I was like, oh, well, she's got her hand on social media, and, she can talk to people and just make them feel more comfortable with it.
Oh, good.
You are extremely knowledgeable on everything, too. It's not just the personality. You bring useful information every time.
Try.
Every time I've heard you speak, so thanks for coming, for sure.
Thank you.
But,
My imposter syndrome appreciates that. I always feel like because I get it,
Yeah.
I feel like it's not of value.
Sure.
And that's silly.
Yeah. No, that's why you do what you do, right? Mm-hmm. So is there any conferences or anything like that you suggest for?
Oh, yeah.
Let's hear it.
So my whole year is spent looking forward to Social Media Marketing World. That is a conference run by Social Media Examiner, which you should subscribe to their free newsletter if you haven't already, because they are always cutting edge information on social media and everything that's shifting. And they have a crazy panel of experts that they do stuff with. In fact, I'm hoping to write for them this year myself. I just need to find something that I can really bring value with. And so that conference is in San Diego every March, and it's incredible. It gets bigger every year, and yet they incorporate so many opportunities for closeness. You really get to know people, you really get to meet people, and the real point of difference with this one is the incredible speakers that they bring together. You can talk to. They don't hide them in a VIP room until the moment they're going on stage and then whisk them away and they're on a plane back home. The speakers at Social Media Marketing World are there the whole time. They are encouraged to interact with people. You can go up and meet them. You can talk to them. The very first people of any sort who I met the first year I went to Social Media Marketing World were Andrew and Pete, who I was talking about before. I just went up to them and chatted with them. I didn't even realize at first that they were speakers. They were just like nice guys. And then I was like, wait, I saw your picture in the speaker bios. You're those guys. And they're like, yeah. And the relationships I've made at that conference have been absolutely mind-blowing and career-changing. So Social Media Marketing World is amazing. As I said before, Andrew and Pete have launched their first ever conference in their home base of Newcastle, England. That is called Atomicon. They're doing their first one March 8th, but it's sold out. So if you don't have a ticket, you can't go. But I'm speaking at that. And then Social Media Day. There are so many social media days throughout the country. Various cities have Social Media Day. June 30th is officially Social Media Day. But because there are so many cities that have them, a lot of them will do them on other days in June, so you can make it to multiple conferences. Last year, I went to Social Media Day Wichita and Social Media Day Denver with a bunch of friends within the industry. We did a whole little collaborative thing called Road to Social, where we kind of road tripped it together.
Very cool.
This year, I'm speaking at Social Media Day Lima. No, Social Media Week Lima in Lima, Ohio. They call it a week. It's 2 days, but Social Media Week Lima is a really good one. Last year, a lot of people I really respected spoke there, and this year, a lot of people I really respect are speaking there, so I'm very excited to be speaking with them. And then another one that I go to all the time is Inbound. That is in September in Boston, and it's run by HubSpot. HubSpot is a great company. They have their own tools for social media stuff and for CRM management and all sorts of things. But the cool thing about HubSpot is they have HubSpot Academy, where you can get certified in inbound marketing. They have certification courses now in Facebook and Instagram. I actually participated in there's videos of me in the Facebook and Instagram course as an expert, which is very cool. And so their conference, Inbound, I think it had 24,000 attendees this year. It was
Wow.
crazy. In 2017, Michelle Obama was one of the keynote speakers. Like, it is serious business. But they have breakout sessions all week long. I think it's a 3-day conference. They have breakout sessions all day long in between the huge keynotes. And I got to be a breakout speaker this past year, and I'm really hoping that I get to again this year. It was incredibly empowering to speak for an audience of 450 people in my very full breakout room. And it's just a great conference. I've learned incredible things there, and I've met incredible people there. In fact, it was funny because this year, I've gone to Inbound for years, but this year was the first time that I had a posse, and it's because I met people at Social Media Marketing World in San Diego in March. I stayed in touch, and all of us, found each other, and we're like, oh, we're all going to go to Inbound together. And so that has been really nice. And now some of the people I met at Inbound, I'm going to see at Social Media Marketing World. So it's just a nice little community. I'm finding my tribe at these conferences, and it's glorious. Even when I go to England, I am meeting up with people who I know from Social Media Marketing World. I went to a conference in England last year, Marketed Live, and met this woman, Lucy, and now I'm speaking at her event in London in March called Digital Women. And so it's just things lead to things, people lead to people, but once you find the right tribe of people, man, it can be explosive, and it just leads to more and more. And you find out where the good conferences are too. Like, once you find out the people you respect, you see what they're going to, and you see what they're speaking at, and that kind of tells you where you want to maybe invest your time.
Sure. So for people, long story short, for people that feel like they need to up their game a little bit when it comes to marketing or social media, get out there.
Yeah.
Get out there, find those people that are like-minded, and see if there's any of these conferences in your area. I know I'm going to be doing that exact thing. Is there any last requests, either of me or maybe the people listening, either a piece of advice or a request for them?
The only way to find out what's going to work for you on social media is to try things, because no one else has your audience, no one else has your business, and no one else is you. So the only way you're going to find out what actually works for the people who you are trying to reach is to do it. And you know what? If it doesn't work, don't let that make you stop putting content out there. Nope, bury it in new stuff.
No. Fair enough. Start putting it out there, folks. And if people are trying to get a hold of you, is there a preferred site or method that they reach out to you?
I appear, according to Google, to be the only Christine Gritmon in the world.
Nice.
So I'm pretty easy to find. That wasn't the case with my maiden name, but it is with this one. And so I am on Instagram and Twitter as C Gritmon. So that's Gritmon with an O-N. So Gritmon. So I'm C Gritmon on Instagram and Twitter. On Facebook, I'm Christine Gritmon Inc. On LinkedIn, Christine Gritmon. I'm all over the place, and I'm christine.gritmon.com.
Excellent. Widely accessible.
Yes, I don't hide.
Excellent. And I'm glad you don't. Thanks for coming out today. And
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate your time. Christine Gritmon, everybody.